Okay, so now that you have an application created, let's explore Xcode a little bit. Let me just make this full screen. And okay, so the first thing that you need to know is that the top bar is where you will have the option to build and run your applications. And in here, you can select which device you want to deploy your application to. Now, of course, if you don't have any device connected, or even if you don't have a developer license, you can just run your applications on any simulator available in here. So any device that you can think of that is compatible with iOS 8 or your deployment target, you can find it in here. There's everything from the iPad 2, which since it has the same resolution as the iPad mini, would work as that, the iPad Air, which works the same way as the iPad Air 2, the iPad Retina, which works the same way as the iPad mini 2 and 3, and well, then you have all the iPhones from the iPhone 4S to the iPhone 6 Plus. Then to the right, you have certain modes for your view. As you can see, you can have a split mode, and you can just swap your views. Most of the time you will be using this standard view, and sometimes when we are working with the storyboard and want to link things from the UI to the code, you will be working with the assistant editor. Finally, you have the option to hide and show parts of the UI or the Xcode UI. This is quite helpful, especially when you're working on a storyboard, since it can be quite useful to have more available space to work on the design. Because if you have everything shown, it can be a little frustrating. Okay, so to the left, you're going to have kind of like your solution explorer where you can find all of the files that you have added or created inside of your project. Everything from new classes to images to lists for lists of information that you need. Everything that you add or create to your project tree will be here. By default, you have the app delegate class, a view controller, a default view controller, which is, we're going to talk a little bit more about view controllers in the future. Right now, just keep in mind that default view controller is going to control this default view that was created on the storyboard. The main.storyboard is where you will be creating all of the design, the flow of your application. You can also find an XIB file, which is going to be right now working as the launch screen. Of course, you can customize this as you want. This is going to act pretty similar to what a storyboard does, because both are useful when creating design, when creating the user interface. Now, there are many other files that we are not going to discuss right now because we are not exactly going to be using them. You just have to keep in mind that the main files that you're going to be using are in a file that is called the exact same way as your project. Now, you may have noticed that when you click your project, and this was the default view when you create the project, you have a lot of options. You can change the version of the application that you are creating right now. You can change the deployment target, which is just changing the version of iOS to which this application is going to be deployed. You can select the devices that are going to be compatible with this application. You can even select orientations in case you want your application to work on landscape as well, or upside down even. And in here you also have the capabilities tab, which we are going to be using in later videos, maybe to add some maps to your application, to add background modes. In here is just for your application to have permission from the operating system to access certain features of the operating system. Maybe if you're creating a game, you will need to set the game center as a capability for your application. Or even Apple Pay if you are going to be paying through your application. In a purchases, if you want to offer purchases right within your app to monetize your application. And there are many other things that we will discuss at its time. Right now, it's easy to just go to the general tab and be able to change the name, the deployment target, and the devices. To the right, we're going to have a tab or a section where we can add elements, from which we can add elements to the user interface. In here you can search, for example, for a label, and you can just drag that label to the user interface. We're going to talk about that later. To the top you also have kind of like an information section for the items that you may selected. For example, I have selected the viewcontroller.swift file right here, and the information in here changes. You have the name, the type, the location, and according to the thing that you select, you will have more or less options in there. For example, if I went to the storyboard and I select the view controller, the entire view controller, you can see that I have a different modes. I even have classes that I can select for that particular view controller and stuff like that. Don't worry if right now it just seems like a lot. As you continue to build applications with Xcode, you will see that you are familiarized with Xcode quite quickly. It's a very simple UI, a very user-friendly UI for the development of iOS applications. It's not that big of a deal to use Xcode. It's going to be very simple, as you may be able to see in the coming lectures.